Audience, welcome back. We don't have a whole lot of Laker news to talk about, but we do got the LeBron Max contract, the Max Christie contract they signed, and a bunch of disappointments so far. I think we've all been waiting for a trade, maybe a big free agent signing, but there's not really been anything that's gone on lately. I mean, we've been waiting for that LeBron contract to kick in, whether he would take a pay cut or not. If he would have taken a pay cut, we could have been able to use the mid-level exception potentially, but now we know that won't be a possibility. And not only that, but they might not even be able to be under that second luxury tax apron. If we look at the contract he signed, it is pretty much a max contract. This is only an estimate right now on Spot Track, but it will be about at that 50 million per year range and about 51, 52 million next season. But again, that's going to prohibit them from giving out the mid-level exception and then potentially really prohibit them from making a trade later on if they do. We've talked a lot about Jeremy Grant, maybe Kyle Kuzma. We will talk a little bit about a bunch of other targets along the way. But if they're over that second luxury tax apron, they won't be able to take back any money through a trade. They won't be able to aggregate contracts in a trade, meaning they would not be able to trade D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura at the same time, anything like that. It will be a lot more difficult for that to happen. So with that in mind, there is a deadline for that though, of the contract officially kicking in. Both LeBron, Christie, any free agent at all that signed, that will be on July 6th. So until that point, the Lakers could take back money through a trade. They could aggregate contracts through a trade. So if you watched my video earlier tonight, I talked about that being a big point of emphasis for them. They really need to make a trade before that point. If not, then I do think it could end up being a disaster for them. They lost Taurean Prince. I mean, not a big deal about Dinwiddie, but he probably won't be back. They're not going to be able to make any other free agent moves if they don't offload a contract or two, and if they don't get below that second luxury tax apron. So with that in mind, how are you guys kind of feeling about it? Where's the panic level at? Again, I'm not too up all the way for the panic level until July 6th. If they don't do anything until that point, I'm going to be a little bit worried at that point, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt until then. We know that Rob Pelinka is trying to make moves behind the scenes, whether that's a trade to get another big name player, maybe not even a big name player, but a Jeremy Grant, a good fitting guy, potentially guy, maybe a Kyle Kuzma. We've heard a little bit about that now between a report from Anthony Irwin. I think maybe Jovan Buha talked about him as well. That would be a reunion trade. I'm not sure how I feel about giving up more trade assets for a guy that they literally traded away. I'm not going to talk about the guy they traded him away for, but you kind of get the point here. I'll check out the chat. Panic level, what are you guys saying? At a 7 out of 10. Scared. Yeah, letting TP go might bite us in the behind. I agree. I kind of get it from the point that you wanted to open up playing time for Christie, but letting Taurean Prince go for nothing, that's a pretty big loss. I don't get why you maybe wouldn't think about offloading Cam Reddish's contract, whether that would be a salary dump or whatever it might be to get Taurean Prince back. That was one of the few guys that they could bring back without offering a mid-level exception to him and only using the non-bird rights on his contract to offer him more than a minimum level contract. I think that's a big time loss, and it's a little bit confusing to me. Maybe they're trying to make him stay patient and telling him, hey, we'll offload a contract or two and bring you back about 5 to 7 days in. But, if you're a free agent, you never know if that might actually be true. And if you got a good opportunity, I think he did take a minimum contract with Milwaukee, but playing for a good team and, following Darvin Ham over there too, who they got along with each other. But all jokes aside here, that is a good opportunity. There should be a lot of playing time for him there. It's a pretty good fit. I see why he did it, but I don't like that they let him go. So yeah, that's a big part of it. If we're going to be a little more optimistic here, we're kind of done with the salary. I'll move that to here. If we're going to be a little more optimistic here, though, I do like the assistants they brought in earlier today. One being Scott Brooks, more of an offensive-minded guy that theoretically will fit pretty well with JJ Redick. They'll probably share a lot, maybe not a lot, but a good amount of the same offensive philosophy. Big emphasis on transition offense. Scott Brooks coached a guy like Westbrook for over half a decade. He'll get how to, collaborate with Redick to incorporate that into a LeBron-styled offense. That will be a big point for them. I like that hiring. And then Nate McMillan, despite the, negative reviews from people saying that he lost the locker room as a head coach wherever he's been, or at least within the past two places that he's been, I like the addition for them. I mean, the Lakers, there was a report that came out saying that they want not only head coaches, but guys who differentiate from JJ Redick. And while Scott Brooks might a little bit, not a whole lot, but Nate McMillan, completely different style of head coach. Very defensive minded, doesn't care what anyone thinks about him, which, I think that's true for Redick too, but you never know how he'll act as an actual head coach. McMillan definitely doesn't care. He's, commands respect, defensive minded, old school grit kind of guy. Played in the NBA. Scott Brooks did too, actually, too, but McMillan was a higher level guy, defensive minded player too, and he'll bring that to their team. Okay, a little more reading the chat. Is the July 6th become official signing, or is the contract able to modify? Yeah, on July 6th, that is when the contract becomes official. After that point, you can't modify it. You can up until that point, but there's a verbal agreement between now and then. It's pretty rare for a contract to be modified, but there was talk about with the LeBron contract, for example, LeBron might be willing to take back $1 million or $2 million less if that would help them remain under the second apron, which, like I talked about, could help them through a trade, could help them make another signing, bunch of other stuff too. You want to be below that second apron. So yeah, you can modify it until July 6th at, I think, roughly 12 p.m. Eastern. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it does become official on July 6th. A little more in the chat. Panic level meh. A lot of pessimism. I don't entirely blame all you guys. I'm feeling it a little bit too. You know me, I'm fairly optimistic to a point. I will definitely criticize, but I like to remain open-minded. And, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until that July 6th point. How do I think AD feels about the lack of movement as of today? It's his team. Yeah, it definitely is his team, and I don't know how he feels about the lack of movement. I mean, they have a completely full 15-man roster. I mean, he's aware of the guys around him right now, and I don't think from that standpoint he's maybe angry with what they have, but that might not be the right way to put it. Like, he's very familiar with the guys on their team and probably wouldn't want to out them, but I'm sure he would like to see some kind of upgrade. I know LeBron would too. There were some differentiating reports about whether LeBron and AD want the third star format back with their team. I don't know if I really think they do. I mean, I definitely wouldn't. I definitely don't. If I were the Lakers front office, I know they definitely don't, given how tough it is to implement a 3-star format nowadays. But yeah, I think AD, if anything, he's not a big fan of playing at power forward. Maybe he might be a little bit worried about how they have not addressed the backup center role yet. I don't know. That might be about the only thing for him so far. What are my thoughts on the possibility of a Levine trade at this point? Think he's a great player despite the injuries. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. Great player, but always hurt lately. I think he only played in 22 games last year in total. And not only that, but it's really about the contract with him. He's not worth 42 to 45 million per year like he'll be getting up until 2028. And that's really the point with him. If you have to give up anything at all to get him, which you probably won't, according to reports. If anything, maybe Chicago would be willing to give back an asset. But, even with that, there's a lot of risk. He's only 29 per se, but feels like a lot older given that he really can't stay healthy, and then the bad contract that would come with him. So not a really big fan of that. I would much rather go for a wing with, a better contract value. I mean, even Jeremy Grant, who we talked about having a not terrible contract, but not a good contract, he would be a much more valuable player to go after and a much better fitting player too. Levine, again, great offensive talent, but not a great defender. I'd rather go after somebody like a Cam Johnson, who is a really good defender, or a Jeremy Grant, who, maybe hasn't been lately, but has proven to be a good defender when he wants to be. I think they need a two-way player if they're going to make a trade, and Levine wouldn't be at the top of my list. Yep, talking about bringing Kyle Kuzma back, I'm being a little too open-minded. I'm referring to the reports here. I'd be open-minded to it. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, but, we talk about the Laker trade targets coming back every year after year, and ever since they traded Kuzma away, they've been linked to him pretty much every year after that, and, a lot of teams have been linked to him too, Dallas being one of them, Boston was for a little bit, but he's definitely on the trade market, and with Washington blowing their team up finally, they're going to be looking to trade Kuzma. He'll be turning 29 within less than a half a year. It feels kind of weird to say that, but he will be turning 29, and that's not a real good fit for a rebuild at that point. Don't mind Prince leaving. I think Dalton can provide what he did. I kind of partially agree with that. I think he can provide a little bit of what Prince did. Dalton should be a better three-point shooter, hopefully, than Prince in the long run, and that's actually quite the compliment. But the thing is, you don't really know what you're going to get with a rookie. Even a 5-year college player like Dalton can net. It's hit or miss. He might be a 10 to 12 point per game guy off the bench at 38% three-point shooting, or he could be a guy they barely trust to play 10 to 15 minutes per game and, doesn't play well out the gate, shooting 33% from three. You never really know what you're going to get with a rookie. Yeah, that's kind of the difficult part with that. But can the Lakers still get DeMar DeRozan? Okay, like we talked about before with that July 6th deadline, which will kick in all the contracts that they signed, meaning LeBron's max contract and Christie's 4-year, $32 million contract. After that point, they won't be able to make a sign and trade because of all the money they'll have on their payroll. And at that point, they might be over the second apron. Even if they're over the first apron, you can't take back a player through a sign and trade. So no, they wouldn't be able to. The sign and trade talk only came from LeBron maybe taking a pay cut, which, right now he didn't, obviously. They could renegotiate until that July 6th point, but I don't see it happening. And then even with Chicago, they used their mid-level exception to bring in, forgot the player, but given that they did that, they're limited in the amount that they can sign and trade him for. Even if they would want to do that with a team like the Lakers or the Miami Heat, whatever team it might be, they can only give him up to about, I think, 17-ish million through a sign and trade. And DeMar White might want more than that. So I don't know. Even that's probably off the list at this point, unfortunately. I don't know if I wanted to do it for DeMar, but I wanted the option of being able to sign and trade, which they really can't do anymore. Yeah, I'm trying to get to all of your comments. If you really want to get my attention, not trying to ask you to do anything, but there is a super chat option if you really want me to answer your question, but I'll try to get to all of them. LeBron telling Rob he not getting out of the second apron. I mean, Rob and Jeannie were willing to give him whatever contract he wanted, rightfully so, between all the money he brings into their team and the impact he makes too. I mean, LeBron might be 39, but if we're talking about on-court impact, he's a top 25 player in the league yet. So, I know you're kind of joking, but that's kind of the truth behind it. He does deserve the max contract. Prince did us like Malik Beasley did. Yeah, he did. He took the less money route to go to Milwaukee on a minimum contract. And now Malik Beasley left Milwaukee too. I can't remember if he went anywhere, but I think there was confirmation that he won't be back in Milwaukee. Do I think we actually make a trade this summer or stand pat until the trade deadline? I think we definitely make a trade this summer, but it might not be the big trade that you're looking for. I think they'll salary dump a guy or two at the bare minimum. They kind of have to because, in my opinion, that second apron is kind of like a death penalty at this point. You don't want to be over it, not only for right now to where you can't take back money through a trade, you can't aggregate contracts in a trade, but that'll affect you even more at the trade deadline. And then after the trade deadline at the buyout market too. At that point, if you're over even the first apron too, you cannot sign a buyout market player that made over the mid-level exception. So you don't want to be over that second apron for sure. You don't want to be over either of them if you can help it. But yeah, back to your question. I think they will make a trade. I'm hoping it will be for a Kuzma, Cam Johnson, or Jeremy Grant type of guy. But, it might only be a salary dumping, a Cam Reddish to free up another spot on their team to open up a little more room on their payroll to get under that second apron, even if LeBron wouldn't help them by taking $1 to $2 million less. So yeah, I think they will make a trade, but it might not be the one you're looking for. Felt like the writing was on the wall with Prince. Yeah, I kind of talked about that too during my draft live stream when we drafted Dalton Knecht. I felt like that kind of hinted at it too. Kind of a similar skill set with the 3-and-D, but more 3-point shooting. That kind of made it a question. And then when Christie signed that contract, I think that really put the pressure on them to either open up another spot by salary dumping Reddish. And given that they haven't done that, I kind of saw it coming too. We got a question from Oscar Solis. Should we give up on Gabe Vincent? And do you think that LeBron should have taken less? I'm never going to tell a free agent to take less money than they can from greedy owners. But would it have helped their team? Yes, in the sense that they could have used their mid-level then. But, they tried to give that to Klay Thompson. They've tried to give that to DeMar DeRozan. They've struck out twice, maybe more that we haven't even heard about. So maybe LeBron knows something that we don't and that they're not even going to use it anyway or whatever. So I don't know. I'm not going to tell him to take less money. I don't think he should have to do that unless there's a guarantee that they're getting the guy he wants or somebody that's pretty much a guarantee to make their team better with him taking less money. And then for the other part of your question, should we give up on Gabe Vincent? I don't think we should give up on him. The guy played in 12 total games last season coming off an injury. And I think, 3 before he got hurt. I think that is the bare minimum of what he could do. If he would get worse than that, I would be utterly shocked. He'll be, theoretically, should be healthy coming back this season. And even when he came back late last year, he played pretty good defense. Couldn't quite find the 3-point shot. But, good point of attack defender. And, we don't really have that from anyone else in the backcourt right now. I will probably trade D'Lo. I imagine whether that happens sooner or later. They want to get a more defensive-minded guard at the point of attack. But right now, between D'Lo, Reeves, you don't really have a good point of attack defender there. And, Hood-Schifino is not in the rotation, but that being their third backup point guard, not a great defender right now either. If you want to bring a Christie into their backcourt rotation spot there, then yeah, he's a pretty good defender, but we have to wait and see if they'll actually play him. But no, I don't think we should give up on Vincent quite yet. I think it can only go up from here for him. It can't go possibly any lower. And he doesn't have any trade value right now anyway. I include him in various trades at times only to make the money work, but I never want to trade a guy at their absolute lowest value, so I would prefer not to trade him if they can avoid it. All right. According to Bobby Marks, they can. I don't know if you're referring to that second apron, but if you are, I think he was talking about how they can avoid it by LeBron taking that $1 to $2 million pay cut. I think him and Woj were tweeting about that, but yeah, they can stay under the second apron, but that doesn't mean they are right now, technically. They can avoid it in multiple ways, whether, again, the LeBron not taking the full amount, or they salary dump a minimum contract, or if they would trade a D'Lo, Rui Hachimura, and get back less money through that kind of trade, then yeah, they can avoid the apron that way. What do I think about Christian Wood next season? I mean, kind of with Gabe Vincent too. He didn't play well last season, and it should only be up from here. I mean, he had literally the worst 3-point shooting year of his entire career, so I can't imagine that would happen the same way again next season, with more comfortability playing with LeBron and AD, and theoretically having a better offense than the one Ham had with them. I imagine like I've talked about, if there's one thing I think we can count on JJ Redick for, it would be to add a pretty versatile offense to their team, whether that be more offensive sets, running more plays routinely. I think all around it will benefit their entire team, and especially the off-ball guys like Christian Wood. What do we got? Think I'm fine with AD playing at the 5 again if we pick up one of those solid D power forwards to back him up. Yeah, I mean, in the modern NBA, and with LeBron on your team too, playing the 4, which he kind of needs to do at this point, yeah, you got to have AD at the 5 for a majority of the time. I definitely want a good backup center for them to kind of alleviate that duty off of him, or maybe play with him in certain lineups, but I've been talking about it. AD is going to be at the 5 pretty much whether you like it or not. That's just how it's going to be. Unless he would remarkably start shooting well from 3 again, which I don't find very likely. I think it's going to be him at the 5 for about 90% of the time. Okay, you're talking about stretching and waiving Christian Wood for the Bobby Marks comment. Yeah, I mean, that would be a possibility too. I don't know why you would want to use the stretch provision on a minimum contract guy when you could probably salary dump them for nothing anyway, though. If you'd be talking about a contract like Gabe Vincent, like a $10 million one per year, then I could understand maybe doing the stretching and waive thing, but not really for their situation right now. I think I would rather do a salary dump or take back less money in a trade up until that July 6th deadline to where they can aggregate multiple contracts. Kuzma doesn't want to come back. Yeah, we don't know that, but the way him and LeBron, I think, were tweeting at each other, or maybe a different teammate, but simply the way Kuzma was tweeting around the trade deadline last year, it sounded like he definitely would be open to returning. I don't think that would be a big deal or a big question for him, but yeah, I don't know. I think LeBron or Kuzma would love to get out of Washington, even if he won't admit it. I got a chat here after all the years. Finally see the mighty JSM. Appreciate you, bro. The notorious CRG. Appreciate you watching, my guy. All right. Roster isn't going to make the Lakers better. Well, they haven't really done anything yet, so I mean, give or take, more team continuity, health alone would make them better, I think. But I agree, they definitely got to make a move or two. If they don't, it would be, I mean, even getting stagnant at times can make your team worse too. The guys don't believe in the mission anymore, don't believe in what they can do, and you can get worse that way too rather than better. According to report, Kyle Kuzma is the promising trade for the Lakers. I think you're referring to that Anthony Irwin report. Yeah, apparently they've been talking about it with Washington. We don't know if that's true for sure or not, but again, usually a one-time Laker trade target becomes a 2, 3, 4-time Laker trade target. So I guarantee they probably reached out to Washington about him like they've reached out to Brooklyn about Cam Johnson, Portland with Jeremy Grant. You can definitely see a trend here. They're looking for a versatile 3-and-D wing, or can be 3-and-D when they want to, and I like that. I want a bigger 3-and-D wing to kind of alleviate a little bit of pressure off LeBron and kind of fill that role that Rui Hachimura tried to fill, but he couldn't quite on defense. And that would be that bigger 3-and-D forward that can defend anywhere from a bigger shooting guard to a power forward. And that's something a Jeremy Grant, a Cam Johnson, a Kyle Kuzma, they could do. And they would fit theoretically really well with LeBron and AD. Should they trade for Brook Lopez over Kuzma? I mean, there have been reports about Brook Lopez too, but I don't know. It's really tough. I like the fit there. Good 3-and-D center, if you'd want to call it that, stretch big, but I don't really like the age thing there, and then having to match that. I think he makes about $25 million per year, so you'd be looking at giving up Hachimura, Vincent, or D'Lo, Hood-Schifino, minimum contract guy combination. And then with Milwaukee, I think they're over the second luxury tax apron. I'm pretty positive about that. They can't take back any money through a trade. They can't aggregate contracts through a trade. So trading with them would be really difficult. Everyone avoiding the Lakers at all costs. That's kind of how it feels like too. Klay Thompson, what did he talk about then? He didn't want to go to a situation that would reflect what he had in Golden State, and he thought the Lakers might reflect that too, I guess. And then DeMar DeRozan not wanting to come there, I don't blame him. He doesn't want to take a big pay cut to take their mid-level. He might have to anyway at this point, but not with them, but maybe a different team. But yeah, and then teams don't like to trade with them. We already know that. Whether the NBA wants to admit it or not, a lot of teams don't like trading with them. Is Lowry from Utah really a possibility, or is that ship sailed? I love Lowry Markkanen as a trade target, but I never thought it would be a real possibility anyway. Even with him currently being on an expiring contract, which I imagine Utah will extend him if they can't find a trade they love for him, but I never thought it would be. I think Utah will ask for about 3, 4, 5 first round picks after Brooklyn got 5 for Mikal Bridges, I think, or 4 unprotected, 2 pick swaps. But you get what I'm trying to say. It would take a lot to get him, and the Lakers don't have that, so I don't think it was really ever a possibility. Trying to get to all your comments here. Portland would love to trade with us as long as Rob Pelinka will give up the picks. I mean, yeah, they would definitely happily trade Jeremy Grant to LA if Pelinka would give up 2 unprotected first-round draft picks, but do I think he should do that? No, I definitely don't. 1 first-round pick for Grant, I think, would be okay, depending on what they'd have to give up with it, but not a big fan of giving up 2 for a 30-year-old that is showing a little bit of decline and does not have a great contract. Be traded. If we trade away D'Lo, how are we going to get a point guard if we are trading for a wing? I don't think that's a big problem. I mean, LeBron ended up being their de facto point guard anyway. He's going to be. He had the highest usage rate on their team. That's probably not going to fall off anytime soon, even with JJ Redick claiming he wants to play him off the ball more. I mean, you can teach an old dog new tricks to a certain level. I applaud LeBron for playing off the ball a little bit more last season, and maybe he will a little bit more off of that in the coming one, but at the end of the day, he's going to be their point guard, especially during the fourth quarter. So between having him, maybe Gabe Vincent for ball handling duties, and then Reeves, who can be a secondary ball handler and playmaker, I think that would probably be enough. I wouldn't want to bet on Hood-Schifino being a rotation guy for them, but between them and maybe whoever they would bring in might be a partially secondary, tertiary ball handler, I think it would be okay. I think I would rather have a a really good 3-and-D wing over having D'Lo's point guard duties that he only gets to fill about 50% of the time at best. So, it might be a little bit of a problem at times, but I don't know. I think I'd rather take the 3-and-D wing over having a another primary ball handler that they really don't utilize. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of teams definitely don't like trading with each other. D'Lo is frustrating, but such an elite shooter in the regular season. Not sure what's available to upgrade from him. But if we can get Vando healthy, allows us to play. Yeah, I think Vando definitely alleviates that D'Lo and AR backcourt, adding a little more defense between them. But at the end of the day, if you have D'Lo and Reeves on the court at the same time with LeBron, you're going to be asking one of those two to take on a tough matchup because they typically play LeBron on the corner 3-point shooter to make him not have to move around that much on defense to conserve energy, which is smart for a guy you want taking on a heavy load within your offense and being your primary ball handler for a lot of the time. So at that point, I mean, for as much as I love what D'Lo and AR can do on offense and what they bring around LeBron and AD, I would rather have a legit defensive-minded 3-and-D kind of backcourt player instead. And that's kind of where the wanting to trade D'Lo comes from. I agree that he is really undervalued in the sense that you're not going to find many point guards that shoot over 40% from three, average over 18 points per game, can be a good, not quite primary, but better than a secondary playmaker for your team. Pretty good assist to turnover ratio. That's hard to find, but at the end of the day, he kind of becomes a little bit of a liability during the fourth quarter, not being a great defender. Probably not the guy you want running your offense at that point too. So it's really difficult with D'Lo. Like, I love him, but at the end of the day, it's like, how much value can you really get out of him in the key moments? And that's where you probably want to upgrade from him. Should we trade for Malcolm Brogdon? I like that one too. That's a really good option I've talked about throughout the past year. He got traded to Washington. If you were not aware, he was involved in a Denny Advia trade on draft day. And, I guarantee that he won't play out the entire year with Washington. I think that'd be a pretty good buy low trade target. The only problem, again, is that he does make about $23 million compared to a guy with a lesser salary, kind of drawing a blank. But, there's a lot of guys they have been looking at in that 20 to 25 million salary range for the upcoming year. And it's kind of awkward because you got D'Lo making about 19 million, so you can't trade D'Lo straight up. And if they would wait until that after July 6th, where they can't aggregate contracts through a trade, then you wouldn't be able to trade for a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, any of the trade targets that we've really talked about, honestly. You wouldn't be able to trade for Jeremy Grant. You wouldn't be able to trade for Cam Johnson because you can't combine another contract with D'Lo or Hachimura or anyone for that fact at all. So if they would before July 6th, which I hope they make a trade in general before then, yeah, I think Brogdon would be a good target. But yeah, I probably wouldn't make him my number one target. And as of right now, we haven't heard anything about him anyway. But like I talked about with the upgrading the point of attack defense and finding a better 3-point shooter, I think that'd be a good target for them on an expiring contract. Wouldn't take that much to get, but yeah. How many minutes do I think Dalton and Bronny are getting next season? Bronny, I would imagine none, other than maybe a debut to join LeBron on the court for a historic moment. Unless he would really show out in the G League, and I'm talking like dropping 20 to 25 a game and playing great defense, and they have an injury to their backcourt, I don't think he'll be getting much of any playing time at all other than garbage time. But, only 19 years old, got plenty of time to develop. That's not a shot at him or anything. He'll have plenty of time to develop in the G League, and I think they already sold out their entire season tickets for their G League team, so people definitely want to watch him down there. For Dalton Kennett, I think 15 to 20 minutes per game off the bat would be a pretty safe bet unless he would absolutely tank in Summer League and throughout training camp. But I don't think that will probably happen. I would probably say 15 to 20 a game for him, and especially after Torian Prince will no longer be on their team. On top of the front office not making any moves, Braun and AD are about to play in the Olympics, which I'm excited for, and which will wear them down or increase their odds of getting hurt. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to factor in, but not really anything you can do about that. If a guy is going to go play in the Olympics, you're not going to really tell him no. I mean, unless you're Golden State with Andrew Wiggins right now. I didn't even know you could do that, but they're not letting him play for Team Canada. But yeah, you really can't do anything about that. You can try to add as much durability to your team, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want. What are my thoughts on Jeremy Grant? He averaged 21 per game this season. Yeah, good third, fourth scoring option. Like we've talked about in, I think, 2 or 3 videos now. I'd like him for the right price, but I wouldn't be willing to give up 2 first-round picks for him, or, D'Lo and Hachimura through a trade or something wild like that. For the right price, I like him. Same with guys like Kyle Kuzma, Cam Johnson. For the right price, I love them, but getting that price might be difficult. Do I think they should make a trade for Walker Kessler? I mean, same argument for Jeremy Grant there if they could find the right price for him, but only thing with that is that I don't think Utah really wants to trade him. I don't really know what that report about him meant in terms of if they're gauging the value for him, if they really want to trade him, which again I don't believe, or are they looking to move on from him for one reason or another? I don't really know, but I think they would want quite a lot for him in return, and they don't exactly feel the need that they have to trade him like maybe a Portland would with Jeremy Grant, where Grant's taking up minutes from their young talent and helping them win too many games so they don't get a good draft pick. At that point, you feel the need to trade a guy, even if they don't want to lead it on. Same with probably Washington and Kyle Kuzma, even though they didn't have any trouble tanking last year. But yeah. Kuzma and Bruce Brown. They wouldn't be able to trade for both of them. Probably not. But yeah, they both been mentioned in trade talks, and I wouldn't doubt if one of them came. But yeah, like I keep reiterating, if they don't make a trade by July 6th, which is that cutoff point for LeBron's contract becoming official, Christie's contract becoming official, then there would be a lot to worry about because they wouldn't be able to aggregate contracts through a trade. I can pull up what I'm talking about here. Go to the old trade machine, cursed. But like I've been talking about with that July 6th date, let's say the Lakers don't do anything until that point, and we want to make a trade with Portland then at that point, and we want to get Jeremy Grant. What can we do to get him? You can't, because you can't aggregate another contract with D'Lo. You don't have nearly enough money to make that work. Hachimura wouldn't work. You're not trading Anthony Davis to get Jeremy Grant, so you can't do anything at that point. Same with a trade for Cam Johnson in Brooklyn, $23.6 million. You can't match a contract with him because you're over the second apron, or even if they're towing that second apron line with where they're $1 million below it, they can't take back any money through a trade there, or they will be over the second apron. So they got to make a trade before that point to where they can not only aggregate contracts together, like for example, if they would trade D'Lo and maybe Gabe Vincent, not that I would do in this combination here, they can do this until July 6th. And you can make that trade, and they can free up more money on their payroll, and therefore get further under the second apron and then actually be able to make this move to stay under the apron for the entire year and upgrade their team while doing it. Again, I wouldn't make this combination of players, but for example, that's what they can do. LeBron doesn't miss Kyle Kuzma. Maybe not, but they talked back and forth actually kind of frequently throughout the regular season on Twitter. I don't know if that's LeBron talking to him because they're not on the same team anymore, but I think he'd welcome him with open arms after a few of the non-3-and-D teammates they've had over the past few years now. I always refer to the term one-way player in my videos, not even lately, throughout the past half year now, and I'd refer to D'Lo, Reeves, Hachimura, Vanderbilt, Reddish, all as one-way players, and if that's half your rotation, all one-way players, you're probably not gonna get very far come playoff time in the modern NBA. You need versatility on your team, and they don't have enough of it, in my opinion. All these rumors, we won't have any of them at the start of the year. There's always gonna be rumors, man, but I think a trade will happen, whether it's the trade you want to happen or not. They're definitely looking to free up flexibility on their team. They don't want to be at that second apron. Where do we show it on Spot Track here? But the second apron, if you're not aware, is at about 189 million, 188.5 million, I think. And right now they're about $500,000 over that if the LeBron contract would become official, which it will on July 6th. And they don't want to be at that point. So they want to make a trade, whether it's offloading a minimum contract guy like Wood, Hayes, or Reddish until then to, simply get further below that line to make another free agent signing either now or later and still be under it. Or if they again would want to make a trade which would free up more money on their payroll, like I did before with trading a D'Lo and Gabe Vincent for a Cam Johnson, Jeremy Grant, whatever it might be, to free up a little money on their salary, on their payroll. How about Rui and D'Lo? I don't really like combining them in the same trade, given that they're the Lakers' two biggest contracts after LeBron and AD. And given that they're not trading for Zach LaVine, that would be the only time you'd have to combine them in the same trade. But yeah, I'd rather trade them separately because they're your two biggest contracts. So, and especially if you do become a second apron team, you want bigger contracts that you can send out one at a time because you can't aggregate contracts together at that point. So yeah, I wouldn't trade them at the same time. Do a few more questions here, then we'll end the stream for tonight. Which two-way player has the most upside for the future? I don't know if you mean two-way contract for their team or two-way player. Actually, the meaning two-way like good offensive and defensive player, but I'm going to think you meant two-way contract player. And in that regard, I would probably have to say Blake Hinson. I don't know if you've kept up with the two-way players that they brought into their team, but he went on draft day in the 2024 draft, and we can even pull it up. He shot about 42% from three during his senior year of college. About 6'7" wing player, 235 pounds, average 18.5 per game. Yeah, I like his upside a lot because fairly athletic guy, probably won't be a great defender, but really good three-point shooter, good rebounder, and I think he'd be really playable in the modern NBA. We got a chat from David Shear. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. Appreciate the 5, brother. Really enjoy your channel. LeBron off the ball more is de facto point guard, but seems very contradicting. Thoughts about bringing Dinwiddie back and make him the point guard? Yeah, I talked about this a little bit before about LeBron playing off the ball more, but that never really happens. He ends up being the de facto point guard anyway. I think that'll remain true even with a new head coach in JJ Redick. Maybe that usage rate will fall from 28.9%, which I think is what he had last season, to 28%, but it's not going to go down to like 25% or 22% magically. I agree. He's going to be their de facto point guard, and you want the ball in LeBron's hand during big moments. I mean, more proven than any guy in the league, if we're being honest at this point, and much more proven as their primary ball handler than anyone on their team. It's going to be that way, but yeah, I agree. It would be good to have a guy like Spencer back if they would trade D'Lo, in my opinion. Maybe if they would trade D'Lo and somebody else and take back less players in return, and they want to add to that backup point guard spot to have another ball handler, and they don't really quite trust Reeves or Gabe Vincent to fill that role. At that point, yeah, I think Dinwiddie would be a pretty good option. He proved to be, a pretty good fit with LeBron and AD last season, even in that limited time. He didn't play well on offense come playoff time, but if I remember correctly, he did shoot, and we can even look it up here, about like 48% from the corner, which is pretty incredible. In, fairly low volume, but hell, he shot 60% from the corner in 28 games with their team. That's pretty damn impressive. It probably was only on about 30 to 40 attempts, but throughout his entire career, Dinwiddie 43.5% corner three-point shooter. And like we talked about with D'Lo many times before, you want a point guard to pair with LeBron and AD that can play off the ball a little bit and be a good three-point shooter. The only problem with D'Lo is that you can't keep him in the game all the time because he's not a great defender. Dinwiddie, on the other hand, can be a pretty good defender, and he proved that. And then with his corner three-point shooting, that might be a pretty good fit off the bench. I agree. I don't know if he'd come back on a minimum contract with them. He's probably looking for more money, but as of right now, he's available. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that for them at all. Ooh. Lakers need Matisse Thybulle to replace Caruso at shooting guard for a monster defense. I haven't heard much talk about Thybulle, but I was actually thinking of that, not for their team really, but maybe for a different team, given that he is currently on Portland and not really young enough for a long-term rebuild. I would not be shocked to see him get traded. I don't know if it would be to the Lakers, and definitely not if they would have Vanderbilt on their team. Even though Thybulle, he did take a step forward with three-point shooting. Why can't I spell his name? I'm drawing a blank here. But he took a step forward with three-point shooting last year, but I wouldn't call him a two-way player yet. Not really. He's more of a defensive-minded guard that can sometimes knock down a three-point shot. And, got to give him a little more credit than I thought. He shot nearly 35% from three last season. Great defender, 2 steals per game, passing lane guy, great individual one-on-one defender. But I don't know if I would want to keep him on my team or, trade for him to add to my team when you already got Vanderbilt. At that point, probably not. But definitely a good option for a different team. I would agree with that. We're going to run it back. I don't think they're going to run it back again. I think they'll make some kind of trade, whether it's only salary dumping, a minimum contract, but I don't think we're going to completely run it back. Thoughts on the Lakers potentially going after Robert Williams? I think I may have talked about this one time before, but I don't hate it. He would be a really good defensive pairing with Anthony Davis at times. The problem with trading for a center that can't shoot from three is that how often are you going to be able to play them at the same time as LeBron and Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis can't really shoot from three anymore, and when you're trying to run at the bare minimum of a 4-out, 1-in offense, you can't have both AD and Robert Williams on the court at the same time very often, if at all, because one of them, if not both of them, need to be outside the three-point line at times to make the offense work. And, again, would be a great defensive look, but I don't know. And given that you have to give up trade assets for him too, probably not very many. My bad, I'm trying to drawing a blank, but yeah, he definitely probably is on the trade block, and you could maybe make a trade like a Gabe Vincent and a Christian Wood for him to make the money work. But would Portland want multiple second round picks, if not even a protected first for him? I don't know. But given who they are and they don't really like trading with the Lakers, they'd probably ask for it. So he'd probably be okay. Yeah, he would definitely be an upgrade over both Christian Wood and Hayes, but I don't know if he would be a guy that would be worth trading for and giving up assets for. Not what I was expecting you to look like. Hey man, expectations are always different. Other trade needs to be Rui, Gabe, Hood-Schifino for Jeremy Grant and Rob Williams. I don't think that would be enough. I mean, we could try it, but I don't know if that would be enough money to add up for both Grant and Rob Williams, and they can't take back any money at this point, not even because they might be a second apron team, but purely because they're towing that line. And then with the contracts becoming official in 2 days now, LeBron's contract and Christie's contract I'm talking about, they don't have much time to fool around with making the money work. So they gotta, if they're making a trade, they want to be taking back less money in return. Do I think it's possible to get both Kuzma and Jeremy Grant? No, unfortunately not. They simply don't have enough contracts really to make that work. There could be a complicated way to do it, I know, but I don't think you get both of them. They're looking at one or the other here, in my opinion. And if they do get either of them, I'd probably lean toward Jeremy Grant a bit heavier. But yeah, definitely not both of them. Is DeMar DeRozan still a possibility? No, unfortunately not. They no longer have their mid-level to offer him, which he apparently had zero interest in anyway, but they don't have that to offer him. And now they can't make a sign and trade anymore either. So no longer a possibility. Who do I believe can be a third string power forward that they can sign if either Vanderbilt or LeBron would get hurt? Ooh, that they could sign right now? I liked the Torrey Craig option for them, but I think he got picked up by Phoenix, unless I might be tripping. Power forward is kind of a subjective position at this point. You're kind of talking about a big wing, not really a big anymore, but there's plenty of options. So I'd have to look into it. Off the top of my head, I couldn't give you a for sure answer, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to be banking on both LeBron and Vanderbilt to get hurt. I think you're hoping for your team to stay relatively healthy, and at the bare minimum for one of them to stay healthy along with Hachimura if they would keep all of them. But yeah. Can Wood be our starting five? Starting five, no, I don't think he can, simply because at that point it's not about moving AD to the 4. To me, it's more about moving LeBron to the 3. At that point, you're demanding him to defend wings again in like a pretty good wing every night, which he can do for about 3 to 5 minutes. But do you want to ask a 39-year-old LeBron to defend a mobile and probably talented scoring option wing for 25 to 30 minutes per game? I don't think you want to do that. Flexibility is the roadmap. I love that comment. I agree. Whether you're talking about financial flexibility, which they're in a pretty bad spot right now, but you need financial flexibility to get under and stay under that dreaded second luxury tax apron, and then team flexibility too, whether you're talking about plenty of good contracts that are movable, you need that, but then two-way players too. Flexibility in that sense where you got guys you can play all over the court and who are valuable on both ends of the court too. I agree. I use the word flexibility a lot during my videos, and between flexibility and continuity, probably two of the most reoccurring words I talk about, and for good reason in my opinion. I'm not as down on the group as many others. Vando and Reddish look like Pippen and Rodman on defense during the in-season tournament. Injuries certainly played a part. Worry is decline due to age. I agree in some regard to where they looked really good up until that January February mark when injuries derailed their team along with Darvin Ham's lineups. That played a part too. I think there would be room to grow, and if they would be healthy, who knows? Maybe they give Denver a better fight. And I, for one, think that if they never ran into Denver in round 1 or even round 2 and, had to play up until the conference finals to meet them again, I think they make it that far again, even with the team they had and with more health again, too. But you also run the risk of team continuity not helping your team anymore at this point, and guys like LeBron and AD not believing in the team that's put together anymore. And becoming stagnant can hurt your team as well. To where, crap, ooh, knocked over the webcam, my bad. But yeah, becoming stagnant can hurt your team as well. To where guys looking around the locker room and saying, I don't know if we can win with this team anymore. We need to make a move, and all that. I think they're kind of at that point too. I feel like LeBron definitely is. He indicated that he wanted them to make a trade pretty badly, and he even held out from signing that max contract up until July 4th here, July 3rd, I guess, actually earlier today. But he wanted them to make a move. He's trying to tell them, hey, make a move. And if they hadn't drafted Bronny, who knows? Maybe he doesn't sign that contract. Is Cam Johnson that much of an upgrade from Rui? I really don't believe in his defense, but maybe I'm wrong. I, for one, think that he definitely is. Cam, even if the numbers won't show it on defense because he played for a pretty bad Brooklyn team last season, really good defender. He can switch 2 through 4, great three-point shooter. Rui, he might have shot better by three-point percentage, but when you're taking less than half of what Cam Johnson took and significantly less difficulty with the three-point shooting too, I think there's a major upgrade there. You're not getting a younger player, but you're getting a more versatile player. Rui's not a good defender, in my opinion, at all. He can match up with a Julius Randle type, a physical power forward, but he can't keep up with a mobile forward, and playing him with LeBron, he has to defend that kind of player, and he can't defend a big either. So it's very rare that you have a good matchup on defense for Rui, and he tends to get lost on defense. He can't defend good three-point shooters. He's not really good at closing out. Unfortunately, Rui took a big step back for me, especially on defense. And if we're talking about Cam Johnson, I think that would be a huge upgrade. Only my opinion, but I think he would be. Nick Richards would be a good and cheaper option instead of Rob Williams. I agree with that. You could probably get him for a lot less, and you'd only have to match a $5 million contract rather than a $12.5 million contract. So even if we're talking about after that July 6th deadline to where the contracts become official, you could trade for a guy like Richards even after that. At that point, you could make it work. I think that'll pretty much do it though. Again, title of the video, are they having a disaster of an offseason? Kind of, but again, you gotta wait until that July 6th point in 2 days here. If you weren't around for when I talked about earlier in the live stream, that is when contracts become official, which would make them a second apron team to where they can no longer aggregate multiple contracts through a trade. They cannot take back money through a trade, cannot make a sign and trade, along with a bunch more, to where it would really prohibit them from making any kind of improvement to their team without a whole bunch of difficulty. And at that point, I would panic. But give them 2 more days before you hit the panic button. I think they definitely can make a trade up until that point with, aggregating multiple contracts together. They have good financial flexibility on their team until that point. So until then, don't panic. But we'll definitely be on the watch for trades. Maybe they salary dump a Reddish or a minimum contract guy and make a free agent signing that way. But I think they're really on the clock and they feel the pressure to make a move within the next 48 hours. So bear with them here. I'm being a little optimistic, but they do have time before it's time to hit that panic button. But apart from that, appreciate all you guys tuning in. we'll do more lives in the future, another video tomorrow, but keep a little optimism and look out for more moves in the future with the Lakers, whether that would be Jeremy Grant, Kyle Kuzma, Cam Johnson, whoever it might be, maybe a smaller move. I think something is probably coming, and we'll be on the lookout for that. But again, appreciate you guys tuning in, supporting the channel, watching, dropping a like. I appreciate all of it, and we'll talk